All right. So thank you for joining us today. We're happy to have Wes Shannon with us to talk about how you can protect yourself from financial fraud and scams. Please post any questions you have in the chat and we'll get to them at the end of the program. So let me introduce Wes. He is a co-founder of Brazos Wealth Advisors and has 35 years of experience in financial services and is a native of Fort Worth. He works with individuals and small business owners on financial planning, retirement planning, and business consulting, and has served as an expert witness on insurance cases and gives regular lectures to the Silver Frogs organization at TCU. Wes is a Bachelor of Business Administration from the University of North Texas, majoring in financial planning, and is a certified financial planning professional. He's also an active member of the National Association of Personal Financial Planners and a member of the DFW chapter of Financial Planning Association, where he's the pro bono committee chair. He enjoys the outdoors, participating in backpacking, hunting, fishing, canoeing, and camping. And he likes to cook, play guitar, and read. And Wes, we are so happy to have you today. I'm going to turn it over to you, and then I'll come back to the presentation for questions.
All right. Thank you, Jennifer. Let me go ahead and bring up the presentation here on our screen so everybody can see it. And go to the slideshow from the beginning. All right. I'll just start this with telling you a quick little story. Years ago, about 5 or 6 years ago, I was in the grocery store and I saw Texas Monthly in the rack by the checkout, and it had my favorite singers on here. So I picked it up and I took it home to read it. And I get about 10 pages into it and I find this ad. And this ad really struck me. It said, if your bank is not paying you at least 5% on your CDs, and this is back when, a few years back when CDs weren't paying 1%, it said, invest with us. And you read through this and it says, your principal and interest is 100% secure. There's no long-term commitments. It's not insurance. It's not stocks, bonds, options, REITs. It's not gold, silver, or any commodities. There's no transaction fees or commission ever. 100% of your deposit goes to work for you. And it's this old security financial group. And they said, we've got offices across the state of Texas, and they've got their phone number, their website, and it had Better Business Bureau in the corner. I looked at this and I go, what in the world is this thing? What are they doing? So I set it aside and I thought, come Monday, I'm going to call that number and find out what's going on. Well, Monday came around and I got this email from the Texas State Securities Board saying they put a cease and desist order on that operation. And I read through it and they were offering an unregistered promissory note, and the state securities board was going after these guys for a scam, like a Ponzi scam. So it says also that in Massachusetts, these guys had already been sanctioned 3 years previously. So this was obviously a very bad financial fraud and scam. And so I use this as an example, not only a story of how prevalent these things are, they're out there all the time, but also how it's easy. You sit there and you go, wow, this is a nice, slick one-page ad in Texas Monthly. This must be something worth checking out. So one of the things that I want to talk about is there's been several frauds in this area, and I'm not talking out of school. These are published information from the Texas State Securities Board, but there was a guy here in Fort Worth who was selling life insurance settlement contracts. He was charging excessive fees, 10%, then 6%, which are in the financial world, if anybody charges more than 2%, they need to disclose that that's an excessive commission or fee. He had all sorts of conflicts of interest that were not disclosed. He wasn't registered to sell life settlements. And the reason people are registered with the State Securities Board and with the Securities Exchange Commission is to protect us as consumers. this gentleman, he had his registration revoked. What little he did, he didn't have a registration to sell what he was selling, but he was sanctioned for the rest of his life and career. And some of the people got some of their money back. Can you see the full screen there on the
Yes.
Texas Monthly?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
This was the cover of the Texas Monthly I was telling the story about. And there's the ad. Everybody can see that ad now? Is it fully displayed? Jennifer, can you see it?
Yes. Looks
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, as you can see, this is a listing of that ad and how impressive at first glance, but there's a lot of things that stand out to me on this. And we'll talk about here just a little bit about reasons why I looked at it as a professional and said, something's wrong with this. And we'll go over this in more detail and I'll show you what they were missing. This is where the Texas State Securities Board entered a cease and desist order against that organization. Here's the Texas case study about James Poe, who was selling life settlement contracts and was shut down for that. Here's a Mr. Nelson over in Garland was selling a real estate based investment program, and he was doing promissory notes. And as you can see, he was promising the moon. He was offering 18% over 2 years and 25% over 5 years, or 21, excuse me, 21% for 5 years. Again, this ended up sending Mr. Nelson to 19 years in prison after this was busted, and the investors got about 3 cents back for every dollar they invested. Mr. Reisinger in Round Rock had an oil and gas investing program. Again, he stole about $4.5 million. He got 160 months in a federal prison after pleading guilty. And some of his money, it was interesting. He was on bail and he took some of the money and went to Vegas and lost another $500,000 gambling in Vegas and spent it on food and having a good time with other people's money. Another case was Mr. Collins out in Alice. He told people he had this super duper stock trading program that he could make bonuses that most people can't ever imagine. And he raised about $5 million from 100 different people. And he failed to disclose that he had a tax lien for $75,000 to the IRS and that he had lost his license to sell these securities. It was a Ponzi scheme. He got 15 years in prison. And a lot of investors didn't get their money back or very little of it. So I had a conversation years ago with a bank teller, and I asked her about how do you catch counterfeit money? And she said, well, they train us to know what a real dollar looks like. And we know what the real thing looks like so well that when something that's fake comes across, it jumps out at you. And that's, I think, is what people need to understand in looking at these financial offers. Let's talk about looking for the way it's supposed to be. And when it's not, then that'll jump out to you, just like that ad did that I was talking about earlier. So first of all, that ad, we'll go back and look at, I'll pull it back up on the screen again, but ads have to be very specific. First of all, they can't offer a specific rate of returns without a full disclosure of risk and possibilities associated. If you'll notice when we go back to that ad, it offered 5%, but it didn't offer any information about other risks to that. Most times, a legitimate financial offering, an ad for an offering, is not going to tell you a projected return. It may give you a range, but it's not going to show a specific return unless it has a footnote and a lot of fine print that accompanies it. The regulators prefer that financial opportunities, investments, explain the potentials, but also the risks that are involved. And they they find whenever you see somebody promising a specific amount, like we showed on one of the guys that was convicted, he was showing 18%. When you see a very specific amount like that and there's no fine print or disclosures, that ought to right away set off some bells and whistles in your head about, hey, maybe this is too good to be true. Also, they have to put their physical address. It has to say 123 South Main Street, Fort Worth, Texas, 76. I mean, it has to be very specific, a street address. And that ad that I was talking about, it said we have offices in San Antonio, Dallas, Houston, Austin. It didn't give a specific physical address, and that's very important. If you see any offering and that's not disclosed, and it can't be a P.O. box, it has to be a street address, someplace you can drive and walk up to, then that ought to be a sign that, hey, maybe this isn't quite legit. They also have to be very specific about what the investment is. If you remember in that ad, it said this is not a CD, this is not life insurance, this is not an annuity, this is not a REIT, this is not stocks, this is not bonds. It told us a bunch of stuff of what it wasn't, but it never told us specifically what it was. And every financial um, offer has to be very specific of saying, okay, we're going to use this money to build public storage units and own them and rent them, or it has to be we're going to drill wells in this county. This is the property we're going to drill it on. It has to be very, very specific. It can't be, oh, this is what we're not. Okay, so that's another thing to look for. Also, an investment offer must disclose the cost. There is a cost to everything. There aren't any free lunches. First, how are they paying for the ad? I mean, it didn't, putting a full page ad in Texas Monthly magazine is not cheap. So somebody's making money somewhere. So when they say no cost to you, 100% invested, well, then are they getting paid a commission by a third party, the financial institution or the insurance company? Where's the money coming from? And all legitimate financial offers will disclose the fee, especially if you're doing business with a registered investment advisor. They're going to disclose that fee up front and say, this is what we're going to charge you, and it's how we get paid. Everybody's in business to make a profit. And so it's not unreasonable to have to pay somebody, but it should be fully disclosed. Remember in the bottom of that ad, I told you it had a Better Business Bureau sign? Third party endorsements are absolutely prohibited from investment offers. That was the first thing that jumped out to me when I looked at that ad that Saturday afternoon. I was like, Better Business Bureau? You can't, the SEC and the Texas State Securities Board just prohibits having somebody endorsing the product without a full disclosure. If you have someone that gives a testimonial about something, it's important that the firm also disclose the people that were upset about it. It has to be very fair in all ends of it. That's why third parties like Better Business Bureau, Angie's List, those kind of things are not allowed for investments. It's some of the things, warning signs of fraud. Unfortunately, for centuries, people have always felt like, well, if I share the same values, if I go to the same church or I'm in the same organizations or live in the same neighborhood with another person, then we have a common interest and a common set of values, and I can trust that person. Unfortunately, today, crooks and scam artists have used that to their advantage. One of the worst scams here just in the last couple of years was a gentleman named Doc Gallagher that was on all the Christian radio stations. And he ended up defrauding about $6 million. And he got basically a life sentence to prison about 3 years ago. And he defrauded hundreds of people out of their life savings. And he was on all the Christian radio stations and wrote a Christian book and would hold hands and kneel and pray in his office with his clients. And he was running a Ponzi scheme the whole time. So you have to be very leery of people that when they first approach you, they're putting out there that religious affiliation, or they're, oh, I live in the same retirement community that you do, or I'm a member of Lions Club. If that's how they initially push their credibility, that should trigger questions in your mind about, well, let me find out more about this person. That's if the crooks are really exploiting these affiliations. Also, on online and traditional advertising, just because it's in a nice magazine like Texas Monthly does not mean it's legit. Any source, whether it's a local newspaper, magazine, TV channel, radio show, the media is only interested if the advertiser pays the advertising bill. They don't have any obligation, nor do they do any due diligence to find out if this is a crook or not. I can buy ad time on radio stations and on TV stations, and as long as I can pay the advertising price, they'll let me put whatever I want to up there. So the media is not, don't think, well, I saw it on Channel 5 News, or I saw it during the ball game, or I listened to it on the radio. That doesn't mean it's a good deal. Doesn't mean it's a bad deal, but it's definitely not a sign that it's a good deal. So go beyond just the fact that you heard it from someone, especially in this world of social media and on websites. I've seen some very nice websites of some very fraudulent scams. So again, you've got to go deeper. The free lunch. A lot of us, I get them in the mail at my age. I get these offers for a lunch at Del Frisco's or Eddie B, some nice restaurant nearby, or nice dinner, and come. Just understand there's nothing wrong with that. The regulatory bodies will approve advisors and investment professionals to do those things, but it is a marketing meeting. They are there to sell something. Now, it may be legit and it may be fraudulent, but it is, whatever it is, go in with the idea that whoever's buying me this meal is here to sell me something. It is a breeding ground for fraud, but as long as you go in aware of saying, okay, I'm going to listen to their pitch, but they're going to make some kind of sales pitch to me. Just be aware of that and be wary. Any unsolicited call, someone calls you up and says, hey, your name was given to us. We want to invest, about this great investment. Don't ever respond to an unsolicited call. If they need to know somebody, they need to have a referral to you for it to even begin to be possibly legit. And the best thing to handle these unsolicited calls is just hanging up. Now, another thing is be wary. There's been a scam that's happened a lot in the last few years, especially to those of us with grandchildren, that someone will call and say, you'll answer the phone and they'll go, Granddad? And you go, yeah. It says, oh, this is, Oscar, your grandson. I was out partying in New York City and I got picked up for DWI and I need $10,000. I couldn't get a hold of mom and dad. I wonder if you could send that to me so I can get out. I've seen this happen to my clients, and they're like, oh yes, I'll take care of it. Twice I've had clients end up sending money to the person on the phone, hanging up, and then having second thoughts and finding out that their grandson or granddaughter wasn't even in New York City. They were home in their bed, or they were in college or whatever. And let me stop right now and explain something. If you're the victim of a financial fraud or scam, If you feel embarrassed that you don't want to tell anybody, then you're doing exactly what the fraudsters and the scam artists want you to do. It's hard to admit that made a mistake or got fooled, but the best way to protect other people from getting fooled or you or it happening again to you is tell somebody, tell your children, tell somebody you know, call the authorities. Don't be embarrassed and keep it to yourself. You've got to share it so that these people can get caught and brought to justice. They are betting on the fact that after they steal your money, you're going to be too embarrassed to tell anybody and you won't do anything about it. So that's playing into their whole scheme. That's part of their model of operation is for you to be embarrassed not to tell. So I would encourage you. I know it hurts sometimes to say, well, I got tricked. It's not an insult to your intelligence. A lot of us can get tricked. Even people in the business, there are times when I've gone down the line with somebody and then I stopped. I went, wait a minute. They almost had me. I mean, it's okay. Just report it. I can assure you that law enforcement appreciates people that report these things. Junk mail, buy a shredder and use it. Don't respond to anything that you didn't request. And also, you didn't win anything you didn't enter into. So if someone calls and says, hey, you're a winner, hang up. Another big warning sign, especially when you go to these, if you attend any of these free dinners or free lunches, is the pressure. A legitimate investment is not a one day only sale. Okay. There's none of this. If you walk out of here, the deal's gone. That's not the case in a legitimate investment. Sometimes legitimate investments close because they've raised the money they're looking to raise. But as my father used to say, it's not going to be the last of the good deals. So I always suggest, even on a legitimate investment, if it's asking a lot of someone, I always say, go home and sleep on it. Give yourself some time to process what's been told. A scam artist doesn't want you to take any time. A con man is not interested in you sleeping on it. They want you to make a decision right now because they know that if you think through it, you'll see the holes in their presentation and you'll see things that are warning signs. So if anyone ever starts pressuring you about before you leave here tonight, you have to do this or this last time, hang up, disengage, go home, sleep on it, talk to your family, talk to friends about it. Don't worry. If the offer fills, there'll be another offer that'll be just as good. So don't ever feel rushed. If you're feeling rushed, that is a warning sign right away. And also confusion. I have had investments presented to me, and I've got 35 years in the investment business that are just so confusing that I always have to sit down and draw it out. I had a, a, a client who was being approached by someone offering an 8% return on their money. You're not getting 8% anywhere, and it's guaranteed. And they called me back and I said, send me the paperwork on that. I want to know, I want to read about this. It was the most convoluted. It did promise an 8% credit in the amount that you invested over time, that when it started to pay off, they would pay you back your original investment plus 8% since the investment to make you whole. If it was all, if they ever do it had so many moving parts. It looked like a one-man band. It was involving buying raw land, developing it, waiting for light rail system to come out to that land. In the meantime, the people selling it were making a fee off of the money they were raising. They were making a fee for buying the land. They were making a fee for doing the building. In this situation, the people that were selling it were going to make about $16 million before the client ever saw a dime of their investment coming back. So if it's complicated, I'd back off. You can do very good and reach all your financial goals with very simple, easy to understand investment options. Confusion does not mean it's sophisticated. It just means it's confusion. It's hard to understand. And think about it. If you're trying to scam somebody out of their money, you want to make it as hard to understand as possible. That's their goal. That's what they're trying to do. If it's complicated, again, that's a warning sign. Bells should be going off saying, maybe I need to go talk to somebody about this. I love this. All talk, no documents. You can see it in their eye if it's not a legit investment when you say, well, send me the prospectus. Send me the agreement that I have to sign. If they say there's no paperwork, believe me, there's no investment. Had a client who was approached by somebody from their church. Supposedly it was a real estate investment. It was basically you gave this guy $5,000 to $10,000. He'd give you a promissory note and said it was collateralized by a house he had in Cleveland. He was buying houses and flipping them, and that was your security on the note. Well, she sent me what little paperwork there was. It was only a 2-page agreement, and the first thing I did was just Google to see if he owned the house. And guess what? He didn't own the house free and clear. He had a limited deed on the house. It was his grandma's house. So, I mean, right off the bat, he's offering collateral of something he didn't have. This is like saying, hey, if you'll, loan me some money, I promise the Main Street Bridge, the 7th Street Bridge as collateral. That doesn't mean anything because I don't own it. So again, paperwork's most important. When you do get paperwork on an investment offering, sit down with someone you trust. Sit down with an investment professional, a friend, a family member, and have them read it also. 2 sets of eyes are better than one when it comes to trying to spot a fraud. Again, find a financial professional you can trust. People that are registered, men and women that are registered in the financial industry, are one of 2 things. They're either an investment advisor or they're a registered rep of a broker dealer. Both of them are registered and have training and some background in understanding financial offerings and can guide you in stuff you want. The first thing, like this fellow I was telling you about earlier, Doc Gallagher, is on the Christian radio stations. And I'll give you the link here in a little bit. You could have checked out. He lost any of his registrations back about 6 years before he got busted. So you can look back and see if these people that are talking to you are registered and have been are being monitored by the regulatory authorities. People that are not registered are off the radar, and so the regulators can't investigate them. If you're registered, you're subject to being audited by the state, by the SEC. So at least you're dealing with someone who is legitimate. Registered investment advisors, they're called RIAs. They charge a fee for their service, and it's upfront. It's usually, this is how much I'm going to charge you, and you agree to it, and you go. Broker dealers and the registered reps generally get paid a commission on the investments, either a trading commission on stocks or bonds, or a commission from a mutual fund or an insurance or annuity product. And then there are some professionals that are dual licensed. They do both fees as an RIA and commissions as a broker dealer. Again, they have to tell you up front, so you'll know what you're dealing with. There is a difference in the responsibility the 2 professionals have to you, the client. The highest level of responsibility is fiduciary duty. RIA is held to a legal standard that everything they do must be in the best interest of the client. So if you have a dispute with that professional and you go to the courthouse, the courts are going to say, Mr. and Mrs. RIA, can you prove that what you did was actually, in your opinion, the best thing for this client? It's not even just your opinion. Was it in the best interest of the client? You got to prove that. The burden is on professional. For registered reps and broker dealers, it's a little less stringent. It's a suitability, which says, can you prove that what you did was suitable for the client? Not necessarily the best thing in their best interest, but it was suitable. I'll give you an example. You get an 80-year-old person comes in with, say, $100,000, most of their life savings is all they've got. A suitable investment would be probably a treasury bond or a government bond, uh, some sort of a bond fund. Well, okay, so that's suitable. Well, I got this bond fund that charges a 1% commission, and this bond charges a 5, pays me 4. You see where I'm going? They're both suitable, so the registered rep may sell the one that pays them the most commission. It's suitable, there's no problem. As a fiduciary at the RIA, they have to sit there and say, well, the 1% will be better for the client. They won't pay as much and have more of their money invested than the 5%. So they have to do what is in the best interest of the client. So that's the difference. But in either case, you're dealing with people that are less likely to defraud you because they're registered and they're tracked by the regulatory bodies. Find someone that you can trust. If you're looking for RIAs, they are required to give you a disclosure form. It's called an ADV, Part 2A and B. It's just a narrative, but it tells you how long they've been in business, what's their background, what do they charge you, where do they get paid, how do they get paid, if you've got any conflicts, if they've ever been in trouble with any of the regulatory bodies, they how often they review the client's accounts. They give you even information about their firm. If you go to a broker dealer firm, they don't have a responsibility to inform you of a conflict of interest, but they are subject to the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. Again, go back to that example of the 2 bond funds. Well, naturally, it's more of a conflict of interest if they go to a higher commission bond fund than a lower one. That doesn't have to be disclosed, but the commission has to be disclosed. So you can look at that and go, gee, that may be a high commission or not. But they are registered and tracked by the State Securities Board and FINRA. One of my favorite musicals is The Music Man. And if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, watch it sometime. It's a lot of fun. But the main character is a con man, and his name is Professor Harold Hill. And throughout the show, as he's scamming this entire town, running a con, the town council is saying, Professor Hill, show us your credentials. And he keeps putting them off. He goes, oh, yeah, I'll bring them to your hotel, or come by my hotel. I've got them, or I'll bring them to your office tomorrow. But he never does it because he's a scam artist. His credentials don't back what he's up to. Well, it's the same thing in real life. Like I said, that Doc Gallagher didn't have any credentials. He'd lost them. He'd been in trouble. So the best way to find out is go to these 2 websites and just check the person out. If you go to a lunch or dinner meeting and the person's selling something, write their name down and go to these websites, brokercheck at FINRA.org or the advisor info at the SEC.gov, and just type in their name and it'll tell you everything. It'll tell you whether they've ever had any kind of convictions, bankruptcies, been in any complaints filed against them. It is the real deal as far as what. Now, if they don't show up, right away, that should tell you that, hey, this person is probably not registered. Is probably, if they're not registered, the reason they're not is because they don't want to be subject to the rules. And if that's the case, beware, run away. That's going to be your first link to a real scam. So remember the movie, check their credentials. Also, what's realistic? Okay. Not over 12%. And that's only in a high growth oriented long term stock fund. Can you even expect the 12%? I'm talking 15, 20 years. And it comes with a lot of ups and downs, a lot of volatility. So, in 1 year in the stock index, it could be a negative 26 and a high of 48% in 1 year. There's a lot of volatility. But over 20 years, you see there, you're looking at an average range of 7 to 10%. That's more normal among stocks. So someone comes in here and say, hey, we're promising you 18%, something's wrong. That's your first clue that, if it's too good to be true, that's because it is. It's not true. Guarantees. Investment professionals cannot use the word guarantee. The only thing you can use guaranteed is insurance products. And insurance products do have a guarantee built into them guaranteed minimum interest rate. Usually in the market today, that's 1 to 2%. U.S. government bonds, people go, well, is that guaranteed? Well, it's a loan from the U.S. government. And as far as we know, so far, the government's always met their obligations. And it's the government. They own the army. They own they make the rules. So it's about, it's considered a risk-free investment in today's world. But I don't ever use the word guarantee. We just don't use that in this industry unless it's in talking about an insurance product. If you remember that ad, and again, we'll go over the ad here again just a little bit. It said 5% guarantee. There's your clue. There's your sign. Let's back out of this. Here's a website. I would really suggest everyone write this down and go visit this website. It's the Texas State Securities Board, www.ssb.texas.gov/investors. And this investor guide is published every year and is available for download to individuals, or you can request a printed copy. It's not for investment professionals. I can't request a bunch of printed copies and hand it out to people. It is for the consumer. It is a great guide. It has these, it'll tell you stories about, like the ones I shared here, of people they've prosecuted and have stopped from scamming people. It talks about what to look for. It also gives some great education on just the basics of investments that are out there. So I'd highly suggest you check it out. It has a great section right now on cyber currencies. Again, that's an area that a lot of fraudsters and scam artists are pushing. Same rules apply. If they're talking outlandish returns, then check these people's credentials and have them explain exactly what you're buying. And then go talk to another professional you trust or a family member and sleep on it. Don't do it right away. But I would encourage you, if you're considering doing any investing, get this guide, look through it. It's very, very helpful. These are your top threats. We've talked about it. Somebody that's not registered. Again, they're not registered because they're offering something they don't want the cops to know about it, the regulators to know about it. Watch out for oil and gas offerings. These a legitimate oil and gas offering should be to what's called an accredited investor. That's someone who has over $1 million in investable assets or an annual income of over $250,000 and has some business experience. If you don't fit that and someone's offering you an oil and gas or a promissory note, then that or a private placement, then right away they at best don't know what they're doing. They're probably a scam artist, but maybe they're not a scam artist, but they still don't know what they're doing because they shouldn't be talking to someone unless they're an accredited investor. Cryptocurrency offerings. Again, you want to know the company, the officers, you want to check their credentials, and you want to see everything in writing. Promissory notes. I see this a lot in real estate. I saw this just last week. A young man was in the real estate investment business. And he had a website and he's going, we'll pay you 8% for a year, 10% for 2 years, loan us the money so we can buy these investments. He's not registered. He needs to be. He's going to get in trouble. Promissory notes only as good as the person making the promise. And if it's a stranger or somebody that you haven't known most of their life, I wouldn't trust them. I'm sorry. It takes a lot for me to want to trust somebody just to loan them 10, 15, 20, $50,000, whatever amount it is. The private placement offerings, again, those should be to accredited investors, people with $1 million or more of investable assets. So again, if it's being offered, you're not that, be wary. If you are that, still be wary. Get the paperwork. Check out the background of the people that are offering it. I saw a private placement for a real estate deal, and I got to looking at it, and the people that were offering it had only 2 years of experience in the real estate business, and they were wanting a minimum of $100,000. Well, I'm not going to give $100,000 to somebody that's only been doing it for 2 years. So that's just, again, check their credentials, get the paperwork. Don't trust anybody just because they're on TV or on radio or have a cool website. We talked about that. Real estate. Real estate is not low risk. I know we've all seen our houses go up in value over the years. If you're old enough, like I am, you'll remember that back in the 80s when the savings loan crisis and the oil field crashed, and General Dynamics laid off a bunch of people on the west side of Fort Worth, real estate values actually went down. It is not low risk. If you're renting or you're leveraging real estate, which most of it is, meaning you're going out and borrowing money, then when there is a downturn or a vacancy, the note payment still has to be made. So that really increases your risk. So again, same rules apply. Check out the person, see their credentials, get the deal in writing, sleep on it, talk to somebody else. Also, we're seeing a lot of people saying, hey, you can use your IRA money for this investment. That has a lot of rules applied to it. If they're even suggesting it right away, I kind of think this may be a fraud. It seems to be an area that a lot of people take advantage of with high fees. So be wary of that. And high yield trading. First thing you can do is check to see if these people are registered with FINRA and SEC. A lot of the scams about high yield trading, they broke the code. They know how to do things nobody else knows. They're making 25%. Those are usually always 100% scams. So be leery of that. I've given you here, again, those two websites to go check out, people, advisorinfo.sec.gov and brokercheck.finra.org. Again, go here first. This is the first place you do to check out whoever's talking to you about an investment. Okay, I'm going to go back over to our ad here. And again, as you can see, it talks about offices based in Houston, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Corpus Christi, and numerous other sites down at the bottom, at the second line down here. Well, right away, we know that's not a legit financial offering because it needs to be a street address. Again, we go through this long list of no long-term commitments, no insurance products. It tells us what it is, but it never says it here what it is. Again, we got this Better Business Bureau in the bottom right-hand corner. Another telltale sign of this is probably not legit. Um, Promising 5% on safe money as a CD alternative. Well, this is at a time, remember, when CDs were paying 1% and 2%. So right away, it's offering a higher than expected, too good to be true type return. So as you can see, once you know what to look for, an ad like this pops off the page. You're just going, wow, this is spooky. This is something's not right about this. That was my reaction to it. So, and then the next slide, I talked to you again about the difference between brokers and RIAs. There are a lot more brokers than there are RIAs. RIAs make up only about 11% of the people that are financial professionals. So, we talked about the difference of suitability and fiduciary responsibility, fees and commissions and disclosures. Again, I've got those two websites here for you to check on both of them. Uh, if you're not doing business with a registered investment person, you should be if you're doing any investments whatsoever. And anytime you're presented with an opportunity, you should take it to the one that you're doing business with. I absolutely enjoy my clients bringing me these deals they get to review. At the worst case, I've talked people out of saying, "Hey, instead of doing 500,000, let's give them 50 and see how it works out." Okay, or that sounds like it might have some benefit. Why don't we only do 10,000 or 25? That won't derail your plans to retire in 7 years, whatever your plans are. So, if anything, a good investment advisor will sit there and knowing your situation can say, well, here's an amount of money that maybe we can invest and just if we lose it, it's not going to ruin your plan. I have a client who years ago they were approached by life insurance investment opportunities, kind of a biatrical settlements down in Waco. This is about 12 years ago. They were promising 12% return. They wanted him to move $800,000 from his retirement account to invest with these guys. He sent me the paperwork. It was very suspect. I told him so, but he was very eager to get that 12%. I talked him into let's do 50 grand. That won't hurt you. Well, 12 years later, he's got about 22,000 of his 50 back. And the company's gone into receivership. The guys that started it have gone to jail. And he may get another 26,000 back someday. So 12 years later, it has not been a good investment. He's very grateful that I talked him out of doing $800,000, as you can imagine. So, it would have been best we hadn't done it all, but at the time, they were on the radio, they were making presentations to him. There was a lot of pressure on him. And it wasn't a total, we didn't think it was a total fraud. It was. We missed that. Again, not anything to be embarrassed about. We did do our due diligence and we did limit the damage. So that's the same thing when you're looking at things. Go talk to your professional and say, hey, look this over for me. See what I can do. All right. I think now's a good time to check our chat and see what any questions we have. Um, Jennifer, looks like we don't have any questions.
Yeah, I don't. I don't see any questions either. We might give it a minute.
Sure, we've got time. If anybody's interested, I'll put back up on the screen here those websites to go check. Well, here, right there, the two websites to go check. Check out anybody that's talked to you about an investment. I can't stress enough, if you are a victim of a financial fraud or scam, please tell somebody, please tell the authorities. Maybe they don't catch them off of your report, but it goes to building a file that when they eventually catch up with these people, they can put them away for a long time. So that's why it's so important to participate with the authorities on these things. Another scam that's out there, I don't have a slide on this, is a fairly new one. Offered to sell something on Craigslist one time, and I got a check in the mail, or I got a phone call, and they said, "Hey, we'll pay this much for it." And I was like, "Well, let me think about it." Next day, I get a FedEx envelope with a check in the mail, and it was more than I was asking for. And so I called my local police department where I was living in McKinney at the time, and called them, and they said, "Oh yeah, this is a standard." Said if you had cashed that check, it would have not cleared, and then they would have come after you for their money back, and your bank would be after you, or it would clear, well, the bank would credit their account. I don't remember. It was a scam. The police officer said, "We'll come by and pick up that check." And I was like, great, because I wasn't going to. I think, yeah, that was the deal. I would send them the product, check wouldn't clear. They'd be wanting a refund. He said it's a mess. So if something happens to you that's you weren't expecting, that was nice and good, be suspicious.
So we do have a question.
Yeah.
What is the best way to handle credit card fraud?
Well, I wish I knew the best way. The first thing to do is immediately report it to the credit card as soon as possible. That is the biggest hassle. I personally have had, I think in the last 2 years, I've had my debit card compromised twice, and that's such a hassle because they have to issue a new card and you have to change all your automatic payments. The banks have always made it good. So, be protective of your credit card. I have found that my banks allow me to go online and turn off a card. And I have like one account that I rarely use. I keep the debit card just turned off. Another thing is, believe it or not, I've had the bankers and my IT professional tell me that paying if you'll put your credit card in your Apple phone or the Apple Pay and use that to pay for transactions, is absolutely the most secure method. It transmits the information in 10 seconds or less, and then it is totally erased, and it's transmitted in a very high level encryption. So believe it or not, pulling the phone out and paying for that cappuccino or that bill with your phone is actually the safest method of doing it. I know it sounds kind of nerving for people who have not used it before, but it is very, very safe. But again, also if you're traveling, call before you travel and say, "Hey, I'm going to Europe, or I'm going to Washington D.C. for the weekend." Let them know that you're using the card. But it's hard to. I don't know how to stop it. It just keeps happening. The best way is just limit the access to your card. It's funny. For years, we hand our card to a waitress or a wait person, and they walk off in the back room with our card and bring it back to us, and we don't think twice about it. But it could easily be back there copying down the numbers and doing something with it. So I love these restaurants where they come out with a little machine in their hand and you just hit it with your phone and pay it and you're done. So that helps.
All right. Anything else?
I sure appreciate the opportunity to talk with y'all today, and hope you find this. You're gonna, Jennifer, you're gonna have this posted where someone can retrieve it later. So
Yes.
if you need these links, the three big important links are that investor guide from the Texas State Securities Board, this right here, and then those two links to check out investment advisors and broker dealers. But I can't encourage people enough to go. It's free. Download this investor guide each year. It tells you about the newest scams that are coming out and how they're fighting it. So it's very helpful.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today, and I hope you gathered some good information. Tomorrow, you'll receive an email with a link to a quick survey, and the information that you provide on that survey helps us plan for future presentations. And as Wes mentioned, we did record this, and we will post to our YouTube page in the next week or so. And we'd love for you to subscribe to our channel and turn on those notifications. So thank you, Wes, for your time. We really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.
Thank you.